Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the podcast.
We are the Carwells.
I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah, and we are, as you know, Airbnb interior designers and investors. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Catch Up with the Carwells. Today, we have a very special guest named Carrie, who is a fellow Michigan investor. We have been following Carrie way before we ever met her. We were watching her kind of redo an A-frame that I was drooling over on a daily basis for a really long time. And recently we got to meet Carrie in person and get to know her a little bit more. And so naturally, as we do, we decided to bring her on the podcast and pick her brain so that all of you can get exposure to this wonderful woman as well. So welcome, Carrie. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome. As I was saying earlier, this is my first podcast, so I'm excited that's with you guys.
I'm so excited to have you here. When I found out that you were coming to LA, I was like, Sarah, do you know that Carrie's coming to LA? She was like,
that is
no
just
way.
Wild to me because I feel like this is where we all have this like imposter syndrome because that's why I brought Lena. I'm like, my hype girl has to come because I'm not worthy of being in this room with you guys. So I feel like we all feel that way. It's kind of crazy. Like, even though I've done this for 8 years, it just feels like I'm new to it still.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're big fans.
Thanks.
Yeah, you've been flying under the radar. I can't believe that we're the first people to have you on a podcast because we've just been literally stalking your journey for a minute now.
It's also hard to keep up with, as you know, like keep up with social media and everything else that you're doing. Like, I was redoing the A-frame. We were also trying to design and build and get something else approved, and so it's hard to do all of that stuff and then try to keep up and promote yourself or whatever, put yourself out there on the internet.
Yeah, social media is a whole separate full-time job that I don't think people give people credit for.
Totally. Yeah, and that's what's fun now is because I have some employees, so I can have some freedom to be able to do these other things, and this is fun for me to be able to like talk with people and share my experience. So
yeah. Well, before we get too far into the episode, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and kind of give everyone a little glimpse at what you do, what you've built, if they haven't, if they don't know you or haven't heard of you up to this point.
Yeah. So I am born and raised in Traverse City, Michigan. We moved back around 2014 when I was pregnant, bought our first house here. And then my husband started talking about maybe looking at an investment property. And I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. And then after I gave birth, I was like, okay, I can't just sit here and do nothing like I thought I could do. I came from the corporate world and marketing. So I thought I was going to just take it nice and easy and be a stay-at-home mom. And so when he started talking about that, I decided to like, okay, let's explore it. And we ended up finding a little condo in downtown Traverse City that they were remodeling. So we bought that. And so I got my first taste of like, okay, I'm going to design this and furnish it and put the listing up and start hosting guests. And then quickly like fell in love with all of that and then wanted to like go full speed into buying everything, which couldn't happen with money constraints. So then after that, we looked at, so in the old state hospital at the Commons, I don't know if you guys are familiar, there was a duplex available there and we had looked at it, but it was kind of expensive for us at the time. And so we were on a cruise and our realtor called and said, hey, someone else is looking at this. Are you guys really serious? So we came home, put our house on the market, moved into half of it and started renting the other half. And then only 6 months later decided, okay, we're going to rent this whole thing out, go live somewhere else, and took that equity out of our original home and started just continuing to invest. So making relationships with people. A lot of our rentals that we bought were just by getting to know our neighbors and doing like deals in their kitchen. So now we're at 9 rentals that we own and manage. And yeah, that's where.
Oh my gosh. I love that you're like, if I'm diving in, I'm diving in. Like, we're selling
100%.
our house. We're like moving into the other side of this duplex. Sarah and I live in the properties, as you know, that we renovate, and like living in that, it's such chaos. But I love that you're like of that same mindset. We were like, I'm going to live here and I'm going to get it done because I love it so much.
I mean, we've lived in campers multiple times. I think that that's the part that gets missed a lot, is like the sacrifice that goes into that. Like, we didn't have family money. My husband has a fairly decent job now, but it's like trying to invest on our own, you have to make those sacrifices. So yeah, I think that's really important for people to know, that like you didn't just get here without all of that stuff. And it's not easy. Like, yeah, it's kind of fun and an adventure, but there's a lot of stress that goes with it. Especially my son was 4 months old when we started our journey. So he was just dragged around with us, which makes it easier and harder in the same sense, because he didn't really care where he lived as long as he was with us. So
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Nobody sees the side where you're like barricaded in one room because construction's happening in every other room in your house.
yes. Yeah.
That's so true. Yes. Well, before we dig in, because I literally just wrote down like 8 more questions that I have for you around all of those rentals and investing in Michigan, on and so forth. But before we dive into all of that, as you know, we start every episode with an Airbnb horror story. And because you have 9 rentals, I know for a fact you've had a horror story or 2 in your journey. So start with that, and we'll kick the show off with something interesting, and then we'll kind of dive into your business.
Yeah. So I was saying to you guys offline that when I was listening to your podcast and I knew that this was going to be a question that was asked, this story came to my mind right away. And I call it like horror adjacent. So speaking of that old asylum that got remodeled that we ended up buying a duplex in, we were living in the bigger unit at the time, and we had 2 sisters that were staying next door. And that unit already gets people nervous. Like, they already think it's haunted. Like, they already have this perception. Like, either A, they want it to be haunted and they're all jazzed up. B, they're very skeptical and nervous and like don't want to see ghosts. Or C, they don't know what they're booking and they've just booked something on Airbnb and they come to it. So these 2 sisters, I get a frantic call from them and they're like, we're outside and we're not going back in. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, well, I came around the corner and there was a dead body on the ground. And I'm like, what? Okay, like, let me figure this out. Stay where you are. So I like come out of my unit, go around the corner. And of course, it's a drunk guy passed out on the floor. So I help him get up, get him back into his unit. He was a long-term renter there. I go down to the girls and I'm like, okay, everything's fine. You know, the living's scarier than the dead. It's okay. He was just drunk. And so I guess what had happened is the sisters had gone up the elevator. One had gone in front of the other, saw it, pushed the other sister into the elevator frantically and made them go back downstairs. So the other sister didn't even really know what was going on or see what was happening. So anyways, that was just like the funny stuff that you come across. I just thought that was a good
Oh my gosh.
for that. So nothing, like, obviously we've had other things happen, as everyone has, but I just thought that one really sticks in my brain, to be like, what are we getting ourselves into? And that pretty quickly after that was like, I need to move away from our guests. I think like have a little bit more distance too would be good. So
so are you talking about the asylum that they've turned into, like, now it has shops?
Yes.
And like
yeah, so it has like, they did a really great job. So you come in the entryway, yeah, there's shops and restaurants, and then you take up to the 3rd or 4th floor, and they turned all those into condos. So that's where people used to live.
That's crazy. The last time I was up in Traverse City, we went with another couple that are Airbnb hosts, and we were there, and I was like, did this used to be I didn't know it was an asylum. So yeah. We went, and I was like, is this a school? Like, was this a college at one point? Like, what is this? And then I asked the waiter, and he was like, no, this used to be, you know, a mental health facility. And I was like, oh, that's why I feel so comfortable here.
That is right up my alley. Anything that would be like haunted, I would just run with that.
Well, and it's been so hard to like market it, because even the Commons is what they call it, in Building 50 specifically where we are, they didn't really want to lean into that, so they never really leaned into those like night tours or Halloween, because they didn't want to freak people out, because they're trying to sell the condos and sell the experience. And so they've just recently started to do like night tours and lean into that a little bit more, and have like some photography classes in the tunnels where like orbs show up. And so it's been kind of fun, but yeah, it's a fine balance. I mean, people get really nervous about it too. So it's not for everyone, but we lived there. Nothing weird happened. We were so comfortable. It just people get in their head about that stuff. But yeah, either can be, they love it or not. And I never know how to answer on Airbnb. I'm like, do you want me to tell you that it's haunted or not? Which direction am I going here?
Yeah, I feel like that, like,
if these walls could
Yeah.
the
talk.
spooky vibes and like the Halloween stuff is very in right now. So right now is probably the time that they should be pushing it. And then like it'll go back down where Halloween won't be as cool anymore and you'll have to like rein it in.
Yeah, we just talked about kind of doing a full experience in one of them where we just position it as like we're going to deck it out and decorate and just kind of come up with some creative, fun ideas. One, to get content and just to try it. So look out for that. We might do some fun stuff.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I love it. So diving into your portfolio a little bit, with the 9 properties that you've got, all 9 are in Michigan, correct?
Yes.
How did you decide that you wanted to invest in Michigan? Like a lot of people, you know, myself included, moved down south as fast as possible and wanted to get away from the winter. And I know that a lot of investors kind of avoid up north because of the seasonality. So what was your, I guess, reason in deciding to kind of hone in on Michigan specifically?
Yeah, I mean, really, it just happened since I grew up here and we moved back here to be with family when my son was going to be born. It just felt like more manageable to me. Like, honestly, I see you guys do it from afar or anyone do it from afar. And it kind of intimidates me still even to be like, how does that work? You know? So that's kind of where it started. It started with that one rental downtown Traverse City. And that was really strategic too. Because even this was back in 2015, but I just was really aware of zoning. And so that was commercially zoned. It was right in the heart of Traverse City. So I knew that it was a seasonal town, but I thought that would give me the best bet of getting a year-round income because there was still so much going on in town all year. We did end up renting them long-term for maybe like the first year or two, and then realized, you know, we'll just drop our rates in the winter. So really my portfolio started with that strategy. So I think, so the first 7 rentals that we have are all pretty much in Traverse City area, in the downtown, in a commercially zoned area. So we're pretty protected in that way. And the A-frame was our first kind of outside of that, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Emily, I saw you.
Yes. Yeah. So one issue that we always run into in Michigan specifically, and you've been doing this since 2015, so I'm sure you have some like experience with this, but when we're running our numbers and we're trying to like make sure that we're going to be profitable in these markets, part of it's a gut instinct because we are from Michigan, and I'm sure part of that is for you, but how are you like taking that into your business and making the sound business decisions when you're like, there's not a lot of data other than your own personal data now at this point, but at the beginning, how are you running those numbers to make yourself feel comfortable being like, it's worth spending money on this?
That's fully my husband. Like, I'm a full gut instinct person. Like that's why we make a good pair, because literally I probably, well, now I'm looking back and the market's gone so crazy. I'm like, we could have had way more. Like, I'm very risky compared to him. He's very conservative. So that's kind of what worked with our deals, to be honest. At first, it would be like, I have a gut instinct that this is going to work. Like, I just couldn't really explain it, but I'd be like, I just have a feeling this is going to work and the numbers are going to work out. Sometimes I'd be like, what number do you need me to be at? Like that. So he would always run the numbers, and then that helps because then he could be like, okay, I ran the numbers. That makes sense. Like, and he's very conservative when he runs it, like with the occupancy rate and nightly rate and everything like that. And back then he didn't have a ton of tools like we do today. So he would kind of compare more like to hotels, and especially those condos. That was what the comparison was anyway for those first couple ones. And 4 of our units are in the same building. So that really helped, because once we got one, then those other 3 I got from literally talking to my neighbors. That's what I was saying, like negotiating with them in their kitchen over their units. So that was easy to grab those other 3 because we already knew what it was going to make, especially if I put some design effort into it. Yeah. So, and then once the A-frame hit, like, I don't think he could really say no. I mean, I like prove it's like once you prove yourself, it's like, one, we have the ability to be a little bit funky and to take more risks. And then like that trust came. So I'm sure he still ran his numbers, but again, it still just landed on like, I see this place. I really think I could make it look awesome and cool. And like, again, on that sense, when you get to that point, it's like, maybe there is a risk that it doesn't work out, but we're going to have fun with it and it's going to be a cool project.
Yeah, and you said one thing that I think that like people miss in these like smaller town markets or maybe local markets is you're finding a lot of your deals like from your neighbor or like off-market deals maybe that you wouldn't know if you were like a big investor coming in from an outside market. And I think that's such a leg up in this industry specifically because there's not a lot of people looking at the markets that we're investing in, and so you're able to get the best deals and the best properties because you're
totally.
local.
Yeah, totally. That is really, I don't know, honestly, if we would have grown that fast with that many units if we weren't here. Just, I don't think we would. And even the A-frame, it's in a little town called Interlaken, or like it's near Lake Ann and Interlaken. But I could see someone from the outside being like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to do, or I'm not willing to like take a risk on that.
So one thing that, before we met you and when we were staring at what you were doing from afar, Emily and I kind of have like two separate pools of investors that we look at for two separate reasons. One pool being investors who are very investor focused, right? They're very numbers driven, and they build the budget on the front end and they stick to it religiously and they pride themselves on their cash on cash return, right? That is like their golden stamp of approval. And then there's investors like yourself who are not so cash on cash focused, not so numbers driven, but are very experience driven, right? Like you care about the design, you care about the hospitality, you care about the business itself. And so when we are looking at, where we want to land one day, we were looking at your A-frame and we were like, look, like we run the numbers on these properties, we understand the analysis side of things, and we understand like we're being told we have to cap the amount we spend on the front end of the property for the deal to be considered a good deal, right? But then we look at projects like yours and several people like you in the space who aren't paying close attention necessarily to how much they're spending on the front end because you have this vision of what the back end looks like and the upside potential that you don't know exists, playing into that and just leaning in and saying like, look, I don't know if this is going to make $1 million or $200,000. All I know is I want this thing that's beautiful that I'm proud of, so on and so forth. And so I think for us, like when we are having conversations in the space and being like, seeing people who are very much married to that cash on cash metric or how much you're spending on the front end, can you talk through your mentality on how you're not that way and like how it's worked out for you? Like, do you feel like that has played in your favor where you're like, nope, I'm going to keep running with this. I have, I'm prioritizing the hospitality and the end aesthetic. Or are you like, wait a minute, I really could have used more of a budget on the front end and maybe I spent too much or whatever the case may be. Like,
thank God Nate's not here. Let's just be real right now. He sweats on everything for sure. No, I don't pay. I literally on the A-frame was like, I don't know what it was, and I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but I didn't see that property. Like I was quarantined. It was early on. I had gotten exposed to someone and it was still when the health department called and made sure you were home, even if you had contact with someone. So this popped up. It was as is. I knew it was going to go for cash. So I sent my builder, my contractor, my husband with a flashlight to go see this place. And from the very beginning, I was like, it has to have a black metal roof and like these scalloped cedar siding. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, that's what it has to be. And of course, all those things are super expensive. And we had a lot more renovation costs. If you go to my Instagram and see just what we had to do to that place was not expected, like tearing down walls and everything like that. So, and there was a couple of times where I'm like, okay, I'm going to not do this. Like I second guessed myself and I'm so glad I didn't because it really makes it stand apart. And it's something that I'm proud of. And even if it didn't make money, like I think I'd be more pissed off at myself, to be honest, if I was like, oh, I didn't do it the way that I wanted to do it. So we went way over budget on it, but it paid off. I mean, it prays for more. We got to pull money out of it. It's doing really well. But yeah, it was really risky. And the good and bad of it is now all my friends and family are like, Carrie can do anything. Like they've been to the A-frame when it was original and they're like, what are you doing? Like, we love you so much. And we know you have all these other properties and we know you can host, but really, is this the property you're going to take on? And now they're like, it's almost a bad thing because I'm like, don't think I can do anything now. Like, that's not realistic. But I think that really just proved in everyone's mind, like, okay, Carrie might have these crazy ideas and she might spend a little bit more or, not be very traditional about it and it will pay off. So yeah, I feel like that's part of this thing to go forward so much is like, you've got to get enjoyment out of it. Like, I don't know. It's just never been all about the money for me. And I think that's why it is so hard for me to find investors, because I don't want that to be like, how do you find someone that can understand that and be okay with that and trust you to do that and not be stressing about the outcome?
Yeah.
Oh,
no, you're fine. I was just going to say, yeah, we resonate with that so much because when we were designers, we were working with investors, and it takes so much convincing to get them to a certain budget where we had to like learn to speak this very select language that was like, this is what's going to get you this. And we had to be able to prove that there was an ROI to the things that were going into the properties. And that's why now we decide not to work with clients. We're like, we're going to design our own properties and make our own budgets, and it pays off. And now those investors that we used to work with are like, oh my gosh, it is paying off. And we're like, yeah, we've tried to explain this to you from the very beginning. It's
And you're like, you lose my number.
literally.
yeah, but I think that there's this undertone in the industry as a whole. I always say this to, people who really understand Airbnb as a whole, that designers and people who value hospitality and the project itself over everything else is going to ruin it for all of the other investors, because they're not going to be able to make sense of the investment itself when they're competing with people who are doing it based off of passion, right?
Yeah.
And vision and all of these other things. But that was a huge reason why we wanted to invest ourselves, is because you get to collect your own data, right? And so I think, we want to be playing in the sandbox that's closer to what you're doing than what other investors are that maybe have a very rinse and repeat method. But at the end of the day, it's like we have to run all these little mini experiments with our own portfolio and our own money to even be able to back it with data where investors would kind of bite. So, and I think too, like when you're looking for investors or when we're looking for investors, eventually we're going to have to start targeting people who want it to be a lifestyle play because they like the aesthetic of the thing that we're bringing to life. And so it's like, okay, we can work together, but that means that I'm going to blow the budget, but then you get to vacation in this like gorgeous thing twice a year because you poured all of your money into trusting me to create this thing that maybe doesn't make all the sense in the world from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, totally. And I think things are changing. I mean, obviously, like that is appealing more to an investor of having that I think they're starting to realize that design does matter, does make a difference, and to compete in this market now. So I think that's good. I think I'm excited. I like seeing all the output that people are putting out and just some of this creative stuff like that I would love to do someday too. So, and that gets us excited. We're not going to invest for a little bit, and we can talk about this later because we have a big project that we're saving that for. But yeah, I'm excited eventually to see where that lands because people are doing really cool stuff like tree houses and building into a cliff. And of course, all I go towards is zoning, and I'm like a dream killer on some of that. Like, how did you get that approved? But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of aesthetic, because your properties are stunning, obviously, and you have a couple properties that have the scallop siding, and it's like the scallop siding in the black, and it's very branded and it's very recognizable. Like you can look at a property and be like, okay, that's a Roost North rental property. What are things that you prioritize branding wise across your properties so it becomes so recognizable? Is it just that aesthetic, or are there little things like we'll make sure that the mattresses are all the same in every single property, things like that, so people understand what they're getting every time? But what are things that you prioritize branding wise?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really know when I started. You start going and then you're like, oh shit, some of the stuff's starting to not look familiar, but I think part of it, and this is probably not the answer you want, is like laziness, to be honest. I know that's not the answer, but it's like, why recreate the wheel, to be honest? Before we built our newest property that's in East Bay Township in Traverse City, we had built in Northport, and that was going to be a rental, and then we decided to stay in there. But like a lot of the design choices that I put into that, I sort of carried on. So that's kind of, it's like I kind of use the same white, like everyone jokes, like origami white. I know she's going to paint it that way. Comfort is huge to me. It does really bug me when people are like, this is really cute. And I'm like, okay, well, does it sit enough people? Like, is the couch actually comfortable? So I'll pick comfort over design actually a lot. Mattresses, huge importance. Again, those things that are really, yes, you're going to wow your guests with design, but if they don't come and feel at home and feel comfortable, like who cares? You know, like they might take some Instagram pictures and you might get some interest from there, but they're not really recommending you. They're going to be like, yeah, it was really adorable, but I wouldn't go stay there. And I've done that in a lot of places. I've gotten duped by some hotels where I'm like, this is awesome. And I get there, I'm like, everyone was lying to me. They don't know how to do hospitality. Like this wasn't clean. This wasn't comfortable. It didn't have a shade, you know, like some of that stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what's going to be interesting about our new project that we're going to work on, because it's probably going to have that similar, I don't know why this black siding and like cedar versions of shake comes in, but that, I don't know where that's, how that kind of started on my radar, but that seems to be sort of a signature outside look. And then again, I don't know, I like using color. Like color's been huge. And a lot of that honestly started when we didn't have a ton of money to start this. So I was getting couches from the used shop. So they would be a colorful, cool couch, and I would design around that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have, probably not the answer that you want, but I don't really have like, okay, we're going to go in. It's like I have a look. People know what the look is, but I don't know if I could like boil it down into anything.
No, I love it, because I feel like you set yourself up to be like somebody who could go to one of your properties and be like, oh my gosh, I want to stay at all of her properties, and I know that I'm going to get the same experience every single time. And that's what you want when you're branding these properties. You want people to be like
Totally.
coming back and maybe not necessarily staying at the same property every time. Like if you have 9 properties and somebody wants to stay at all 9, they understand the level of experience that they're getting with each one. And I love that. And I love the black siding and the shaker. I'm obsessed with it. So
yeah, it's been fun. And
that.
like the newer house, so the A-frame, I really wanted it to be soft. So I did like the scalloped because I wanted that contrast with like the sharpness of the metal roof. But at Hakala, I wanted that to have a look. Like it's, I don't know if you guys will understand this, but it feels very like Detroit. It's very like, not harsh, but like even the cedar siding and the stain color that I picked was like, you know, it almost looks like a ski, and it has like that deeper color. And so those were all intentional. So yeah, I don't know. I guess there is a lot of thought going into it, but it's not, I've just never really probably talked about it. But yeah, and we've talked about also, we do have a lot of people that will come, and you know, it's not even just design. It's like, yeah, how do they feel? What kind of experience are they getting from the customer side of it? What are they, you know, are they coming to a note? Are they coming to like a really well put together welcome book where we're telling them what to do? So yeah, all of that ties into it. And we've talked about doing something fun, like almost like a passport, where it'd be like, okay, check off that you went to this property and then you came back for this property, and then do something fun at the end of it. So I love that. I love when people want to know where things came from. I love telling them that, like, I'm designing a house and I want to know where this is, like that. I used to ask people that all the time. So I love sharing that information. People want to invest up here when they stay, which is so awesome, or fall in love with Traverse City, and we get to be like a part of that. And again, that's what drives me. I don't think I would be doing this for the last 8 years if that wasn't fulfilling. I really would. I'd be like, bye, like selling out. I don't know. If you get bogged down with all the negative, there's a lot of negative stuff. So that can wear on you.
Well, and you make it special, you know? Like, I think when earlier this week I went to Legends Ranch in Baldwin, and his entire process is always about making all the hunters that come to Legends Ranch feel special. And it's that same thing, right? It's like all of those like soft skills that you incorporate into your property is why people want to come back, right? It's not necessarily about you, it's about them and how they feel like they are a part of the thing that you are building. So I totally agree. I just think that the operators that are in Airbnb right now that really pay attention to all of that are the operators that will be able to build out a brand just like hotels have, that's recognizable, that's worth going back to, that's worth talking about when you go home. So I think that that's really what's kind of building longevity in. But you're absolutely right. It's both aesthetic and the function of the property. So
Yeah.
we love to hear.
Yeah, and I think if you
Align with you.
start with that, like I think that's why he's going to be so successful, and I want to go there. I will not eat the heart of anything unless you like lie to me and tell me it's something else. But I do want to go visit that. But I think if you start, I think I guess that's the hard part in this space, and that's why it's fun to like get to know you guys and get to know other people that aren't that like money isn't like the number one priority, because I think that comes, and I think we're seeing that too. Like people talk about it all the time. I literally had iPhone pictures, like the worst pictures, until like 2018 or 2019. Like I did not have to market. I started my Instagram in 2019. I put it up there and it booked up. Like I didn't have to do much. I mean, granted, I wanted to, and I kind of set the standard of like, this is what we're providing guests. This is the level of customer service. But I think people are going to I think we're going to see people leave if they're not truly like in that hospitality mode. Like if they don't truly love hosting people and they don't truly love providing that experience for them, they can make something that looks really cute, but I don't think that's going to be able to compete moving forward as the markets are getting saturated.
I totally agree. We will argue that till we're blue in the face. We always argue hospitality over investment because at the end of the day, the hospitality group will beat out the investment group just because we're willing to put more in, right? It is not about the numbers, it's about the emotion, and the numbers follow the emotion. So I think you're right. I think that there's, a lot of operators like us in this space that are going to be doing a lot of pushing out operators that are completely numbers driven over the next few years. Which that's exactly what happened in the hotel space. So I think it's a natural progression, but every time we meet operators like you or like us where we're like, oh, yep, the writing is on the wall. Wait a minute, you guys aren't, tracking every single expense that you put into these properties. Like I've been in so many chats where we'll talk to other designers or other high-end operators and they're like, oh yeah, we just stopped keeping budget at some point and decided that the vision was more important than the upfront cost.
Which makes it really hard to run a business. So when we started our hospitality company around it, like we have one of our team members is doing some design for us and she's like, Carrie, what's your budget? And I'm like, I don't know. This is so hard. Come to me and I'll make a decision if I like it enough, which is not what you should do. Like I should 100% give her a budget, but I'm like, well, if you convince me that that's really cool, I might say yes to that. It might be a little over what we wanted to spend. So it is really hard though. I'm trying to figure that out now. Like, how do I have that fine balance, especially when you have employees where you want to empower them and like what that looks like? Because again, for so long, it was me just convincing my husband on that. And so, yeah, I mean, there is something to be said about it. But again, you can't really skimp on some of that stuff. And we have, and it just, especially furnishing, like, and sometimes, I'm going to skimp on this, but I'm going to have to replace it. But we're definitely seeing now that like, let's just spend the investment on some of these pieces so that we're not having to have downtime on the property, trying to like last minute get something and like just put that in there. But I get a traditional investor might be like, I don't want to, why would I spend that much on a table, or why would I spend that much on a couch or something like that? So yeah, it is a different space and I'm okay with that. I'm fine. I never really fit in with the investor crowd. Sort of did my own thing and I'm okay with that. I'm not here to be like, okay, I'm going to now take over all of Traverse City. So yeah.
Yeah. Sarah, it used to be, we would always factor that she was going to go at least 10% over budget. And then that became the standard. And so then it became 10% over the 10%.
And then don't tell her.
And then it's just like, Sarah just can't stay on budget at all. But I love that you talked about giving your employees like the ability to make decisions on their own, because I think you've done a really good job on social media of building like a hospitality brand and caring about your guests, but it's very obvious that you care about your employees as well. And I just want you to maybe speak on like why you prioritized that. It's very easy to see the transition from your care for hospitality to your employees, but I think it shows the success of your business that you do that. So can you touch on why you care so much about creating that environment for your employees as well?
Yeah, hopefully I don't get emotional. Yeah, I mean, I started my career in corporate America in marketing, and I never felt like I could really like show up as myself. And you guys have known me and got to know me a little bit. I mean, I'm different. I'm crazy. I like, I talk about, things that are going on in my family and want to be really open with people. And I always felt like I couldn't do that when you showed up to work. And so that was just so important to me when I started a business. Like, I wanted my employees to not just come to work. Like, this isn't just like a 9 to 5. And as you know, in this business, it's not. I mean, my property manager is still on call 24/7. So there's a lot of stresses that go into that. And so I wanted to make sure that they feel really cared about. And yeah, I mean, we have like, even in our office, it was important that we have like snacks and drinks, and anyone that comes in, it's like that hospitality mindset plays into it. But and on a more serious note, I was doing this by myself for 7 years. My husband helped me when he could, but I wore myself out. Like, was having physical problems. Like, my skin was reacting, like coming out with rashes. I was having like, had to give up gluten and dairy and eggs, and like wasn't knowing what was going on. And obviously it was stress. And so when I brought on my first employee, I wanted to make sure I like saved her from some of that, to be like, okay, you're going to be on call 24/7. There's going to be in high stress situations, but let's like make sure we can take care of you too. Like, I want this to be like a long relationship. And when she got pregnant too, it was really important for us to like give her proper maternity leave. And like, when she came back, to like do what I did. I mean, I got to bring my baby around. Emily and I were talking about this before you got on, Sarah. It's like, my son was 4 months old and I got to drag him around to the properties. Like, why would I tell her she can? Like, that doesn't make sense. And they really, I've been so lucky, and I know I won't get lucky forever, but they just like embody our whole brand. Like, we always say like blood in, blood out, which I know that's not going to be all my employees moving forward, but I've been really lucky. And so as much as I can take care of them, like, that's my main mission. And I want people that have an entrepreneur spirit, but then can like be with me. So you have to like allow for a lot of that flexibility in order to keep people around.
I enjoy so much of that because I think, Emily and I talk about that all the time. It's hard to find a room that you fit in. And I think a lot of us share that pain from coming from corporate America, where you're just like, why does it feel like I'm trying to fit a square into a circle? Like, why is this clunky? Why is this stressful? Why do I have to be around these people? X, Y, and Z. And so now to, feel that pain and then be able to take that pain and take a look at something that now you're responsible for. It's like there's a lot of pressure being the leader of something, right? Like,
so much.
Like, people are following you. Like, people are relying on you for their income and for, to kind of fulfill their passions and their purposes. And so, like, to watch you do it in a way where you so deeply, like, there is no work and life, right? There is just all of it exists and all of it is part of you, and then you're an extension for everybody else. And so I just think that that's really, really beautiful. Emily and I have no employees right now, right? We have never hired anyone to like work under us in that capacity. And I think it's because we're still like trying to accept the fact that like people could see us as leaders and like we could, do the
I mean,
thing.
I feel that too. I'm like, what? Why am I here? Okay. I don't think you ever get over that, especially if you're like us, where we're always, and I talked about this on my stories the other day, like, I'm always trying to learn something new. I'm always like, and that's what happened with the hospitality company. I'm like, I got these rental things down. I mean, part of it was like I wanted to hire employees, but I could have done that without starting a whole other branch. And it's like, oh, now I want to try this new thing. But then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, yes, I have educated guesses, but it's hard when you're that creative person where you're like, okay. And then the newest thing that I'm struggling with is, because I foster my employees so much, we all have collective dreams and goals, but they have things that they want to accomplish. And I want to let them run with that. And it's kind of crazy. Like, trying to be that leader, and then but be nervous. Like I can tell what other people feel about me now, where my husband would be like, you're going so fast, and I feel that way about my employees. I'm like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Like this feels like a lot, but it's awesome. But I have to like create enough of that for all of them to move forward. But we talk a lot about that, of what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? What's your long-term goal? How much money do you want to make? Like, let's make this happen. I think a lot of their future income, I would love for it to come from some sort of bonus and get them involved. We talked a lot about, do we invest with them, which would be so cool to be like, this is a Roos North property that's company owned. Like those things all really excite me. But it does come with a lot of challenges. As you guys have seen over the last couple of months, I'm sure I've showed up to some of our mentorship calls and it's rough on me. Like, cause it's a lot of pressure. And I'm doing things a little differently than other people. So I have a lot of friends that own businesses, but I'm creating something new. And so it's hard to relate sometimes and hard to get advice from some of
that. Preaching to the choir. You're like, you are the mentor, and you also need a mentor who understands intimately how to move your business forward.
That's so true. But it's like, and I think that's so awesome. And I think we're on the same boat of that. It's like realizing like, we need someone that can coach us. Like we need that support system. Yes, my husband's there for me, but at some point he's like, please, can we just talk about work just for like 8 hours and not like 24 hours? So it's nice to like have someone else like helping that cares about you and can like, guide you through some of that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. That resonates. Yesterday we were on our morning walk and I was like just spilling on Ethan about all of these ideas in my head, especially after coming home from September.
You're like, I'm fired up.
So many people. Yeah. And Ethan's like, Sarah, I love all of this. Let's do the last 15 minutes of this walk talking about anything other.
You're like, there is other things I didn't know. But it's hard when you're passionate about it because you're like, this is what excites me. Like, this is what I get. Like, so they get both the excitement and they get the frustration. So they hear like, oh, I'm so excited. And then they get all of the like, oh my gosh, all this bad stuff happened or all this happened. Yeah. It's never ending.
Well, I think, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have one more question. I don't know if you have another question, but my last question for you, Carrie, as we start wrapping up here is, what is next? I mean, you alluded to a bigger project that you're working on. What does the next step look like for you and your business?
Yeah. So in January, we started R&R Hospitality. So I kind of shifted to investing in employees instead of investing in property. So kind of taking a risk on them, hoping that they can help grow my company. And part of the reason why I did that is because a couple of years ago, we bought 18 acres of commercial resort property in Northport, Michigan, which is about 45 minutes north of Traverse City. And last year, I got it all designed with an architect and a civil engineer and got it approved through the township. So that's going to be our next project. It has 18 cottages, a pool, a lodge, pickleball courts. It's approved for a wedding venue. So we're kind of gearing up for that, really. It's like the naiveness of me, like last year thinking like, I'm going to hire interns and like have one employee and we're going to run a whole resort was really naive of me. So this is just putting us really in a good position. So part of R&R Hospitality has a cleaning company, maintenance, property management. So taking all of that skill that we're learning from that and then be able to apply that when we start a resort. So hopefully in the next year, we'll do a phase one. We're trying to do it all ourselves, like not have investors. So we're thinking phase one will be a lot of the infrastructure and like 6 cabins, sort of a little bit of proof of concept, and then continue to grow from there. So we're really excited about that.
I'm so excited for you. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that we're in Michigan, so we'll get to see it.
100%. I can't wait. Like, that's the hard part about it too. Is like, I can't wait to just like host everyone. Like, my husband's going to be like, we need to make money. And I'm like, I'm hosting all my friends. That's going to be the hard part. But good thing there is seasonality, because then it'll just be like, we'll cozy in at winter and be like, get some hot tubs, get some saunas. Oh yeah, it's going to be really fun. I think like it's hard because I announced things a little bit early, which I knew better too, but it's like, that's all I kind of get asked about. So even when I was starting R&R Hospitality, people would be like, how's your project? And I'm like, Oh, you mean that one? I'm like, we're holding off on that one. So once we get R&R like stabilized better, we're going to focus our attention back on there. But it is a huge project. I mean, just to get it approved and designed took a year of my life. So yeah, but it's going to be fun. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for people to be able to watch that journey, because you're right, it is a huge project. And so for people to be able to see you do that from the ground up, it's going to bring people so much knowledge. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think that's fun to like bring them along, and hopefully I can have enough space to show them the challenges of it and some of that other stuff, and not just be like, oh, here's a pretty reel that we completed at the end and it's done and everything's fine.
No, but that's amazing. I mean, literally, Emily and I have talked ourselves in circles as of late around wanting that to be our next step as well, as more building out retreat centers that, you know, have a commercial aspect to them that can host events, right? Whether that be weddings or whether that be corporate events or mentorship graduations or masterminds or whatever the case may be. So you kind of entering the chat in our lives in these last couple of months and now hearing that that's your overall vision, I'm like, oh my God.
And then you're like, you figure it out first, and then you deal with all the challenges, and then we'll come talk to you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm okay with that.
Say less. Start a mentorship and we will literally be your
yes. I know. I think that's what's fun about the mentorship thing, is because like it's exciting to then when you add something new to be like, oh, now I have this new thing that I can share and hopefully save someone a lot of pain and stress for it. So
name the price. Name the price, and we will literally be in your back
seriously, it's like yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, even we were thinking about that with a cleaning company. It's like I would have paid someone to be like, show me all of this so I don't have to suffer through it. It's a lot.
Right. Well, that is incredible. I mean, Traverse City needs something like that. Emily and I have said that a million times over. It's like you watch Hocking Hills that's exploding, and you watch some of these like beautiful developments in Minnesota. And I mean, as far as I know, other than you, there's no one in Michigan who's really operating at a high level offering hotel experiences, right?
Yeah.
It's like everywhere you go, the hotels are old, dingy, been around for decades and decades, and so we need a breath of fresh air to come into Michigan.
Totally. It does make it a little bit hard. That's why we're interested of doing it in phases and how we're doing it, because financing makes it really challenging because there isn't any comparable. And in my mind, I'm like, that's more reason why we should do. It's so funny how that works. I'm like, but there isn't comparables. That's a good thing, like not a bad thing. So that's been an interesting journey, kind of figuring that out. But again, everything happens for a reason, and I think we'll end where we need to be with that too. So we looked at SBA loans, and they wanted to have us do it in 2 phases, and first phase had to have a lodge, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because the lodge doesn't make any money. So we've been kind of navigating through that. So I think we'll come with a good answer that will be what we need and what we want. So
yeah, isn't it interesting that they want to be like, well, we'll give you the money, but you have to do what we want you to do with it. I'm like, what? That's not why I came to you.
And also they're like, well, you've never run a resort before. I'm like, I have 9 rentals. I think I can figure this out. Like, yes, it's different, but it's especially in the first phase. I'm like, what is that? This is an extension of what we've already got going on. So that's also frustrating too. I think that's less likely now, but I know that in the early stage when we thought we were going to go sooner, that was some of the back and forth, which is, again, it banks for you. I know that they're trying to
they're doing
their job, but I'm like, but I'm going off my gut. They don't like that. Trust me.
Oh,
they're like, no.
That will be me in the bank. Emily will be like, oh no, we have this plan, and I'll be like, don't you see me? Don't you believe in it?
Haven't you been following me on Instagram? Didn't you see what I did with the A-frame?
Like, why isn't it an immediate yes? Like,
exactly. No, it's fine. Yeah. Well, great. This is
well,
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys made it easy.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Honestly, I mean, Emily and I have been fangirls for a minute, but we just are growing more and more to love you even more than we already did. So thank you for coming on and kind of sharing your secrets, sharing some of your knowledge, getting us excited about being able to run alongside you and make Michigan a better travel destination than it already is. Tell people where they can find you if they listen to this and they want to follow you on social.
Yeah, so Roost North Rentals was my main account. But I also just started Carrie.dryer, Drier. And that's a place where I can share about all the things that we've got going on. So Trunkline, the Trunkline is is the brand for the future resort. And then R&R Hospitality is our hospitality company. So if you go to Carrie.dryer, you'll be able to find all my handles. But I wanted to find a place where I can talk about everything that we've got going on in one spot.
Yes. Well, that's what we want. Like the Carrie dryer version of it.
Yes, 100%. And that's been really fun. I just started that recently, and it's been really fun. Just really connecting with people again. And that's what it was with Roost. And not that there's not connection there, but it's been really fun to kind of get back to my roots on that and sharing what we have to offer of our knowledge. And then we also have roostnorth.com, which has all of our rentals on there as well that you can see.
Beautiful. Well, Emily will.
I was going to say, we will have that all tagged in the description, whether you are listening or watching. So you guys can follow Carrie and get to know her better as we have, and also watch her continue to build her already successful business.
Beautiful. Well, thank you to all you listeners, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.